So how we schedule our days and how we manage our time is really one of the keys to figuring out how to produce at a very high level, how to get a whole lot of stuff done in a short period of time. And if there's one change that I've made in my life, it's incorporating something called batching. When it comes to some things in life, batching tasks comes naturally. We run the dishwasher after it fills up. We water our plants at the same time each week. We do our laundry once the hamper's full. Could you imagine how unproductive our lives would become if we decided to break these tasks up into 100 different parts? How insane would it be to wash each shirt right after you wore it? And yet that's exactly what we're doing when it comes to many other areas of our lives. And when you begin to think about how you might be able to incorporate batching into other domains, you'll start to find just how powerful it can be. By planning ahead and consolidating tasks, we can save time, prevent constant task switching, and focus on the things that really need to get done. So this approach did not by any means come naturally to me. It was definitely a process of trial and error, as well as pulling inspiration from a lot of books that have written on this topic before. But I do find that when I'm really intentional with how I schedule my days, when I wait until these tasks accumulate and build up to the point where I can just knock them all out at the same time, I find that I build a lot of momentum and I'm able to actually get ahead with my work and clear some space to actually enjoy the work that I'm doing. So I want to provide a couple examples that have helped me out the most, from email to meetings, phone calls, and my own creativity. So let's hop right into it. I want to start with an area that you might least expect to see batching in: creativity. So I am a filmmaker by trade, as you might have seen from the videos that I make on this channel, but I don't imagine that a majority of people that watch this really understand what goes into making these videos, how long it takes, as well as how much stuff I make across all platforms, from social content to my newsletter to Patreon exclusive content, the YouTube videos, of course. There's just so much stuff that I make in a given week. Now I've hired a couple people to help me out to bring into that process, but for the longest time I just did it by myself. And I continue to do a lot of this work on my own, and I find that I would never be able to produce this volume of content, this amount of stuff, if I didn't incorporate some kind of batching. I have a newsletter that I send out every week. Whenever I come up with an idea for my newsletter, I'll jot it down on my phone. I'm not gonna drop everything and write the whole thing right there. Then when I have a collection of ideas, I set aside some time to write. I'll work my way through writing 4 newsletters in a row, each of them typically taking about 1 hour to write. So in just a half day, I'll be able to write 1 month worth of newsletters. Now all I need to do is schedule to send them out over the next 4 weeks, and I'm done. That's one less thing I have to think about. Similarly, once a main video for the channel is completed, my editor or I can go about putting together all the social content, creating all the captions, and scheduling them all out at the same time. These tasks are similar. They require you to be in the same editing application, in the same headspace, to become familiar with the same style of creating. Now, this is really important. I'm not talking about turning our creative work and our passion into an assembly line. That is the last thing that I want you guys to do. What I'm talking about is using that creative momentum, that energy that you've built, to continue to make the same thing using that same mindset that you're already in. If you guys remember back to a few weeks ago, I did an interview with Steven Kotler about flow. Once we enter this heightened state of consciousness known as flow, our creativity goes through the roof.
McKinsey did a 10-year study. They found that motivation and productivity can go up 500% and flow 500%. We see creativity spike 400 to 700%. Learning, depending on whose numbers you're going by, the Department of Defense did some work. They found learning spikes 230% in flow. And here's the funny thing about the human brain. We actually are hardwired for peak performance. The body will move in the direction of peak performance on its own.
So another way that I've brought batching into my life is through phone calls, meetings, and interviews. So back when I was doing the podcast regularly, I found that the only way that I could stay consistent with it was to schedule 2 to 4 interviews over the course of 1 to 2 days. I found that the kind of energy that I needed for interviews was totally different from what I was doing with my video editing. And by consolidating them, by scheduling with all these people over a short period of time, it just made that whole process so much easier. And again, now that I have 4 interviews shot in 2 days, those are all of the podcast episodes that I would do for an entire month. I do the same thing for phone calls, meetings, and social activities, and for a very important reason. These activities require a completely different type of energy and focus compared to my solo creative work. If I had to constantly bounce between social meetings and creative work, it would absolutely drain me, and I wouldn't be able to bring the best of myself to either of these areas. So I'll often batch meetings and phone calls on the same day each week. I sometimes find myself in a zone of connecting and meeting with other creatives around Los Angeles. Instead of breaking up multiple days of my week, driving around LA to meet with people for coffee or lunch, I schedule everything into the same day. This way, I'm still able to make those connections, but I also don't let it interfere with my other work. Now, this might be weird. I might be alone here. This might just be a me thing, but I also find that I need to warm my brain up. So if I'm talking to somebody in the morning when I'm like getting coffee, my brain is just not working. I am not clicking yet. It's not the coffee, it's just that I am an idiot. And like when I talk to people, especially when it's the first person I've talked to in the day, I just don't know how to say sentences. But then as my brain starts to warm up and my brain's like, oh, that's what we're doing today. We're talking to people. I feel a lot better about those interactions and I feel like I can get much more out of them and I can enjoy them much more. I just start to talk better, unlike this video. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Your inbox is a trap. It's one of the most distracting places on your computer and constantly pulls you back again and again throughout the day. And each time it does, it will typically absorb large chunks of your time. But if we decide to instead treat email like laundry, the entire flow of our days would change. By scheduling an email once a day, we're accomplishing two things. We're preventing the constant distractions throughout the day of always checking back at our inbox and letting other people's priorities become our own. And two, once we actually do go through our inbox, we can just fly through it. Instead of just like the constant check all day, it's just check. It's just check. It might actually be check because it's a little bit longer, but it's not going to be check. You get it. You get the point. By doing this, you prevent task switching and stay focused on checking, writing, replying, and archiving. You can do one quick pass through your inbox. It might take 30 minutes to an hour, but then you're done and you can get back to your work. In my experience, most people understand that emails often take up to 24 hours, even 48 hours to respond to. You can even allow up to a week to respond if you have an automatic email responder that lets people know that you only check email once a week. Now, I will say that when it comes to your closest collaborators, maybe it's a client, you should probably have a conversation with them and let them know, hey, I'm only gonna be checking email once a day, or hey, once a week. This way, if something urgent does come on the table, you can offer up, hey, give me a phone call, shoot me a text if you really need me. But for the time being, I'm gonna really experiment with trying to just focus on my work. And this is something that most people should be happy about, especially if they're a collaborator. You're being more effective, more productive during the day, and you're not being as distracted by all these requests in your inbox. I understand that not everyone's work allows this. If you're a personal assistant, then living inside your inbox is kind of a part of the job, but I'm guessing a huge portion of people watching this video don't realize this is even an option. Before I wrap this video up, a quick word about our sponsor for this week's video, Storyblocks. Now, Storyblocks is a new sponsor to this channel, but it's not something that's new to me. I've been using them for the past 6 to 8 months and have gotten so much value from their service. I have saved so much time by using Storyblocks. 99% of what you see on my channel is shot by myself, but that remaining 1% can be a pain in the ass to fill. It's the planes flying over airports, busy cities filled with people, and aerial shots of Los Angeles. Instead of spending an entire day running around the city getting these 1 or 2 shots that I need to finish up my video, I just go onto Storyblocks, and then I have hundreds, if not thousands, of options. Get access to an unlimited library of over 1 million assets strong. Anything from Storyblocks' massive library of high-quality footage, After Effects templates, music, illustrations, and sound effects is yours to download with their unlimited all-access plan. If you're a filmmaker or creative, I highly recommend you check them out. Click the link in the description below to try it out for yourself. So batching has become a really effective tool that I've used on a weekly basis to just prioritize my work and like I said, get a whole lot of stuff done in a really short period of time. That said, batching is not gonna work for everything. I do realize, at least for myself, that there are definitely tasks that either take too long, they're simply just one-offs that I do once and then I'm done, or it might be something where it just drains my energy completely and I'm just unable to do it back to back to back. So when it comes to your own work, your own productivity, you're gonna have to experiment with these things and see what feels right for you. Above all, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. If you already do something like this, maybe you didn't even think about it, you didn't even call it batching, or maybe it's something that you're inspired to do now, I would love to hear about it. So let's start a discussion down below in the comments. And that's it for this week's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye now. I gotta stop doing that. It's so weird.